Nick, it's a pleasure to hear you talk today. I wondered what it was that you were most wanted to get across to the people and the public.
In the presentation, I wanted to communicate a little bit of the excitement that comes from the application of new technology to traditionally paranormal events or mysteries. And I think there's a real opportunity for growth there. But the bigger message is that it is there to be explored. There is more to life than bricks and mortar. There is a sense of intelligent, non-physical aspects to our world. And I would like to think that with new science and new technology, we might have more evidence to justify further exploration. Psychical research is the Cinderella, and I'm not even sure that people would accept it as a science, because it's right in the fringe of human experience and scientific methods. But no, I would be pleased if people would say, okay, it's there to be found. And each individual should find a pathway to try and encounter it. And it is normal for the people who do encounter it.
And what would you say to encourage people to take this path and to look further and deeper into the world of parapsychology, etc.?
I've just been speaking to one of the attendees, and she said that she has sat and done her own development for many years. She's read and she's watched things on television and so on, and she's done a lot of thinking about it. The difficulty is you need someone to return the ball once in a while in a way that you don't expect. You need to step out of your comfort zone. You need to actually do something that's active to engage with this thing that we call the paranormal. And I think that people need to hook themselves up with like-minded individuals. You get more from the group dynamic or from a sense of community than simply sitting on your own. And I think that there are dangers to trying to achieve altered states of consciousness only on your own. I think the idea of having a teacher is one that's worked for me.
Yeah. And when you say working on your own and the dangers within that, could you expand on that a little bit, Nick? Just for the general public to understand what it is. There's an awful lot, as you know, ambiguity about what these are, and scare stories and so forth.
Yeah. I mean, I've worked in what you could label spirit communication, although there's lots of labels could be put on it. I've worked with that now for more than a couple of decades, and in the vast majority of cases it's always been positive and constructive and helpful. And I judge these activities by their positive outcomes. If it wasn't positive, then I would be doubting whether I should get involved. But there have been the odd occasions in which I've been distracted, and you might say by negative considerations or by slight anxieties as to what kind of spirit entity or communicator is it that I'm dealing with. And on those very few occasions, I've learned it helps to surround yourself with knowledgeable people who operate with integrity and positivity and increasing experience. So it's just about, if you choose a path, whether it's meditation or group development or psychic development, pay attention to your teacher. Find a teacher that works for you. And here's the difficulty. In my humble experience of the Scottish scene, there are a lot more wannabe teachers than those that have a genuine gift. So you have to have the gift of discernment, I think, and you have to take your time and not rush in. And while I have no objections to money being involved in transactions that involve skill exchanges and so on, I do think that it's a factor, and that people need to be careful that they're not getting charged for something that's illusory.
The other question I think is important, how and when do you think mainstream science, I know there's only one parapsychologist that's actually recognised in Britain, when do you think mainstream science will accept and take it in a more serious vein than the one that they do at the moment? And how can that be achieved?
I think if I knew the answer to that, then a lot of other dominoes would fall into place. I see mainstream science as increasingly interested in specialism beyond specialism beyond specialism. I look at PhD theses and think it may well be a valid area to pay attention to, but it's such a minuscule area that I don't see the impact on the common man. I do think that the implications of psychical research and some parapsychological results are so enormous for our understanding of what is life that it's too challenging. I think I despair of the influence of the people who fund research and their ultra-conservatism, and I think fear of the implications of opening up people's minds to a world where science says, you know what, we're not even sure what is anymore. And unfortunately, I think there's a lot of people who see that in, say, the quantum mechanic field, and who latch on to this idea with all the belief and faith and hope of people who would like to see a new science, but it will be a slow process. I think it always is. I have a friend who's just a professor of clinical physics, and he said to me that in any branch of science over, say, 50 to 100 years, you can show demonstrable progress. And he challenged me to do the same for psychical research. When you look at psychical research, in particular, and to some extent parapsychology, it's not clear that after 100 years of, say, having the SPR in London, what we have learned about the spirit world. Even some of the evidence accepted by pioneers like a century ago are now being denied and disputed by their colleagues in recent times. And I do despair about the alleged scientific perspective. We know about the observer effect, we know about the experimenter effect, but what we may not be clear about, which will become clear in the future, I think, is that when you approach something in a highly critical, doubting, sceptical, even cynical manner, don't be surprised if the phenomena evaporate as you arrive in the scene. The challenge will be to find a new breed of experimenter who is prepared also to be an experiencer to take the field forward.
One other thing, Nick, is there anything that you can impart to us that would give us a further insight into perhaps your own, even your own personal view of what has occurred in the paranormal, as it said, field, as I said earlier, what I think is a normal field? If you could share some of that information with us, I would appreciate it.
As a child brought up in the mainstream church, I was aware of what I would call a strong sense of presence or spirit moving around, and I could almost see the air shimmer as it approached. And when it went through me, I used to feel as if I'd been electrocuted in a mild sort of way. And this was explained to me at the time as being the Holy Spirit. The challenge I had was, as an adolescent and a young man, these experiences would happen outside of church services, and they would happen perhaps when I shook hands with someone or walked into a new room for the first time and so on. And I began to think that the Holy Spirit is involved in every aspect of my life, but it doesn't seem to want to communicate. It's just that I'm having these experiences. So I looked for a church or a movement that could in some way develop my notion of this interaction with the Holy Spirit. And I went through the charismatic Pentecostal churches and found a spiritualist church in which a small Irishman stepped on the stage and turned to me as a total stranger and gave me evidence not only about my life, which was accurate, but about 2 children that had died at a very young age, at birth and prior to birth. And he told me that they were still alive in the spirit world, and that they recognised me, but not the lady sitting next to me, who was not their mother, but was my new companion following the failure of my first marriage. And when I asked myself, how did that stranger know the details of my life that was known to almost no one, never mind in that particular venue? I was a stranger. That set me off on a path which led to my eyes being opened even wider. I have seen healing, hands-on healing, remove tumours and save lives. I have seen spirit physically manifest in the form of children and adults. I shook the hands of a spirit being where there was no body attached to the arm, while I held the hand and felt the grip and the pulse and the heat and the feeling of the skin and the skeletal structure like any other man's hand, but felt, while holding it above the shoulder, to find there was nothing attached. I've seen spirit levitate objects, spin objects, put them through walls and ceilings, and they've not always come back. And I've seen people levitate in front of me. And I would doubt my own sanity, although no one else has until I tell these stories, except I made sure that I had reliable, strong witnesses. I had a professional hypnotherapist with me when I went to the school experiments, and he was there to make sure that there was no sense in which there was any group hallucination or hypnagogic state. And that's only the tip of an iceberg. The more I look into it, the more I get back. And I don't expect people to necessarily change their beliefs, but I would like to get them to consider. It's what I call the white rhino argument. You only need to see one white rhino to know that such things are possible and to begin your search.
What would you class as your personal motivation for this obvious deep investigation into the world of the psychic phenomena?
When I was a child, I used to watch a programme called The Incredible Hulk, in which the blurb at the beginning said that the chief character was searching to understand the monster that was within him. And as an adult, I would change those words to say, I feel that it's the very essence of life to try to understand the spirit which is within me. And the more that I learn, the more I realise the world is very different from what the ordinary man in the street seems to think. It has taken away fear of death and all fear. It has left me feeling that I know almost nothing, and that motivates me to learn more. And I've been blessed by experiences that have rewarded my 2 decades of effort. And I just want to spread that. I made an agreement years ago. If I was given an experience that convinced me, I would tell it to the world. To anybody who asked, to anybody that showed an interest, and never take a penny for it. And I kept my word for 20 years. That's not about me, but it shows that I'm not motivated by money or personal gain. I haven't written books, not particularly interested in publicising anything about myself. I am interested in publicising that the possibility there is more to life than bricks and mortar is more than a probability, because I can say from my experience and the unanimous consensus of witnesses who've been with me, such things are a certainty. Whether other people will find them depends on the path that they choose, but they're there to be found, and they will open not only your eyes but your heart.
What would you say to people who are tempted to go and take up for a clairvoyant, a reading, an encounter with one of their deceased relatives? What warnings would you give them?
I'm often asked, is there someone that I can recommend?
Yeah.
And my answer is usually no, because I don't recommend anyone with whom I have not had an utterly convincing demonstration of their reality of their linked spirit. And since I don't seek messages for myself very often from other people, I'm able to get most of my own guidance from my link with spirit. I haven't even had many sittings with mediums for clairvoyance. I do think that the vast majority of people out there could be most kindly described as a work in progress. And there are more people who believe they have a gift than actually have a gift. And it's not my job to go about in judgment as some kind of authority. But what I do feel is you only need to spend a few seconds in someone's company to know whether they have wisdom to offer that comes from life, and whether they have a live connection to update that wisdom or linking in the spirit. And maybe if people develop their own sensitivities, they would know without finding with an air of disappointment that they've paid a lot of money for something that doesn't advance them. I don't know if regulation is the way to go about it, but I would say be very cautious. There are more wannabes than realities. The Scottish Society for Psychical Research, or the SSPR as it's commonly known, has a website, sspr.co.uk or sspr.org.uk, which is updated and contains various activities, which are mainly monthly lectures, informal discussion groups, and special events and demonstrations. Their experimental programme is not so much open to the public, but it operates in the background, and we have an extensive number of investigations over the years where we're asked to go in and help people. So if there's anyone who is interested in that, then log on to the website, or we do meet in Maryhill Borough Halls on the first Wednesday of most months, September to April. But I'm not even wanting particularly to promote the SSPR. There are other organisations, and some of them are spiritualist organisations, but there are other good people out there. What I would recommend is that people don't sit alone, that they don't trust the first person that offers to give them a service, that they ask about, and that they join the community of like-minded people in Scotland. We have a real history and tradition of second sight in Scotland, and the tolerance of, let's say, the ambiguity that comes from fully engaging with life. And I think that people in Scotland are blessed with an awareness that other cultures and countries might not have. My own people that have given me great wisdom in recent years have been Native American Indians.
Kyle, thank you for sharing your insights and your experiences.
Thank you. Thank you.